This video is for 11.1 and it's going to cover circumference and area. So we're still in circles and then we're just kind of adding on into some new things. So the first thing that you're going to look at is finding the circumference of a circle. And the circumference of a circle, okay, I think we've all learned this before, but just in case you need a reminder, it's the distance around the circle. So it's how far around you would travel to go around the whole circle, okay? And we find the circumference by doing 2 pi r. Okay, so circumference is pi times the diameter or pi times 2 of the radius. So either one of those is fine, okay? And then one thing I want you to kind of pay attention to is if I ask you for exact answers. Okay, exact answers means like no decimals. We are going to leave pi in the answer. So you're not actually going to like plug it into your calculator or anything. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we're just going to practice, pretty easy to start, finding the circumference with given information. Okay, so it says find each indicated measure, give an exact answer. So remember that's in terms of pi. And then also round to the nearest hundredth. So we're going to take that and give us a decimal. So you're going to do two things. You're going to give an exact answer and a decimal answer. So circumference of a circle with the radius of 9. So remember the circumference is equal to, and again, you can do 2 pi r or pi times diameter. So since I'm given the radius, I'm just going to go 2 pi r. So 2 pi times 9. And so I multiply, so 2 times 9 is 18 pi, and it's in centimeters. So this right here, 18 pi centimeters, is your exact answer, because once you multiply by pi, we get a decimal, okay? And so then I can go ahead and put that in my calculator. Okay, you have a pi button on the left-hand side. If you have a graphing calculator, it's above the divide sign, okay? So when I put that into my calculator, we get 56.55 centimeters. And this is your decimal answer, which is your approximate answer, we can also call it. Okay, so moving on to this next one, we can do the same thing. So we're finding it with, you're finding the radius with the circumference. So we're kind of going backwards. I know the circumference. So circumference is equal to 2 pi r. Okay, and this right here is the circumference. Let's see. So I'm just going to rewrite this. 26 is equal to 2 pi r. Okay, so we're going to get rid of everything to get r by itself. And everything is getting multiplied. So to undo multiplication, we're going to do division. So I'm going to divide by 2 pi on both sides. Okay, so these cancel. And I'm just going to rewrite this. 26 over 2 pi is equal to the radius. And then we have to look. So in exact form, I can reduce 26 divided by 2. Okay, so exact form, the radius would be 13 over pi. Okay, that's your exact answer. And then I can plug that in my calculator and we get 4.14. And again, meters is our unit. That's the decimal answer. Okay, if you were going to divide from the beginning, make sure you group your 2 pi, okay, so that you're dividing by 2 pi as a collective. Okay, before you flip the page, this is a super important distinction because we just got done doing arc measures in our last chapter, and now we're going to do arc lengths. So an arc length is a portion of the circumference of a circle. Okay, you are measuring a distance, not an angle measure. Okay, so again, we just did arc measures. Now we're doing arc lengths, which is like the distance or the length of the line, not the angle of the curve, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and flip to the next page, and I'm going to re-emphasize that again. Arc length is a part of the circumference. Okay, it's the length of the arc. Okay, and then we have two equations to help us find it. So the first one is the arc length of AB over 2 pi r is equal to the measure of AB. This is the angle. Okay, if we want to, this right here is an angle over 360. So this is the distance. Okay, that's the angle. So arc length versus the measure. Okay, and then we also have that the arc length of an angle is, again, the angle over 360. Okay, so take a minute to write those down. We're going to use the top one to find the radius, the bottom one to find the arc length, and we're going to go through some examples. Okay, I'm going to explain where things go. I'm going to use some colors to just help us, and hopefully it makes some sense. So we are going to find the arc length of the arc AB. So I'm trying to find this distance, not the angle of the arc, but the distance of the arc, okay? So that's where the difference is. And so I'm going to actually use this bluish green equation. So I'm just going to write it right there. So I know the arc length of AB is equal to the measure of arc AB. This is the angle over 360 times the circumference, because again, it's part of the circumference, so 2 pi r, right? Like I'm trying to find this purple piece of the whole circle. So the whole circle is the circumference, and I'm finding part of it, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So when I go to plug this in, the measure of the angle right here, remember this is an angle, okay, the angle is 70 degrees. So I'm going to go 70 degrees out of the full circle, which is 360, times 2 pi times the radius, which is 9. And I'm just going to put this over 1 so that when we multiply fractions, we go straight across. Okay, and then as I do that, okay, I'm going to multiply straight across. So I get 70 over 360 times 18 pi over 1. And again, I'm going to go straight across here to combine, and I'm not including the pi. I want an exact answer first. So I'm going to go ahead and go 70 times 18, and I get 1260 pi over 360. And then I need to be able to reduce. So I'm going to divide those numbers, and I get 3.5 pi. That is my exact answer. So this distance in purple, okay, this distance in purple is 3.5 pi, okay? And again, we can plug this in our calculator, 3.5 pi, and I get 10.99, which if I round is 11.0. Okay, so that distance is 11 centimeters. Okay, so again, we're gonna slowly go through some more examples, but that is how we find the arc length, and I'm just gonna slide that over there. Okay, so looking at the next one, okay, I'm looking to find the circumference, okay, the whole thing, the circumference of this circle. Okay, so that's how I'm gonna use the top one. So the top equation, I'm going to actually write it in orange though. So we're going to do the arc length over the circumference, 2 pi r. Okay, and remember, this whole thing is the circumference. And it's equal to, okay, the measure of AB, which is the angle, over 360 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in. So I know the arc length is 5 over the circumference. And I'm just going to call the circumference C because I'm looking for that whole thing. 2 pi r is the circumference. So I'm just going to call it C. And that equals the measure of the angle, which is 45 degrees, out of the whole circle, which is 360 degrees. So we set up a proportion, and we know that when we have a proportion, we can cross multiply. So this is 45C is equal to 5 times 360. And that is 1,800. And then divide by 45. And I get that C is 40 inches. So that's the circumference. Okay, there's no need to plug in pi or anything, right? We didn't have that. So the circumference is 40.